Hey, Sens fans, welcome to season 5, episode 10 of the Senstennial Podcast. And do you guys hear that? I am getting word that DJ Smith has, in fact, been relieved of his duties as head coach by Steve Staios. It has happened. This is not a drill. I don't know
Wow.
what your immediate course of action is, but please take it. And here we are on the Senstennial Podcast, ready to discuss this important matter. So, after almost 6 seasons as head coach of the Ottawa Senators, finally, DJ Smith is no longer Ottawa's head coach. Now, Steve Staios talked to the media today. He mentioned that, after the Florida Panthers game, where Ottawa lost, 5-0, they said that some changes were made and the coaching staff were going to focus on some details, changing a bit of their defensive zone structure. He said after that, he liked what he saw from 3, 4 games or 5 games, said that he liked what he saw in that stretch. They did a good job. And he said after that, things started to fall apart. They went back to their old habits. And essentially, that's what led to him deciding that they needed to make a change. And on the back of that, Jacques Martin comes in as interim head coach, joined by assistant coach Daniel Alfredsson, who takes over for Davis Payne, who is also let go. So I'm going to throw it over to Benet to get us started. Benet, what are your thoughts on the big news in Sens land?
Yeah, I mean, the first and most obvious thought is that this has been a long time coming. I think that if it had been any other season and if it hadn't been for all of like the drama that the Sens had been through at the start of the year with like the delays in the new ownership taking full control over the franchise, then a month into the season having to deal with, the fallout from the Vegas Golden Knights investigation that led to Pierre Dorion getting let go. I think that they would, if it hadn't been for some of those extenuating circumstances, I think they would have made this decision sooner. Because ultimately this happened because the Sens have just been spinning tires the last couple of seasons. Like every year, the team comes in, you're ready to, the roster's getting better, more holes in the roster are getting plugged and players are improving and growing and developing. And yet every year they come out of the gate and just fall flat in their faces. And, they don't look ready to start seasons. They don't look ready to start games. They don't look ready to start periods. Like it's like on every kind of like level of preparation and results, it's like the Sens have been falling flat under DJ, in particular the last couple of seasons. Like at the beginning, it's okay because to a certain extent, because you are, a rebuilding team and you're trying to get guys to just play the right way and don't focus too much about the results, just like keep improving as a young player and But we decided this before in the podcast. It's like it's hard to turn that corner from, okay, boys, just go out there, have fun, play your game, get more confident, the results don't matter, to, okay, guys, now the results do matter. And, there's going to have to start to be some consequences if you're not delivering. And DJ was not taking that next step. He wasn't taking that next step in terms of the points percentage that he was achieving. He wasn't taking that next step in terms of his relationship with the players and with the room and starting to, be less of the good cop and more of the bad cop. It just, he just wasn't making that leap. And, few coaches do. It's really hard to take a team from, the basement of the league to a contender. Usually there needs to be a coaching change or two along the way. And my biggest takeaway is that this one should have just happened sooner, because the longer they waited, they risked more and more of this being another lost season. And, I think that it'll be very hard for the Sens to dig themselves out of this hole already. And, hopefully Martin, a new voice, can, elicit something of a reaction from the players, maybe get that new coach bounce, maybe, on an interim basis, he can really get this team playing the right way and we can start to win some of those games in hand and all that stuff. But I still don't know if it's going to be enough at this point. The Athletic in their latest rankings as of today gives the Sens an 11% chance of making the playoffs and a 0% chance of advancing to the Cup final. And I think most Senators fans would agree at this point, making the playoffs seems, like a very tough ask in and of itself. And you can't imagine this team winning a playoff series against any of the other teams in our division. And it just sucks. Like, Giroux signed a 3-year deal last year. 2 years of it, you can now pretty much say bye-bye to, having, just been, spinning tires, not going anywhere. He's going to have 1 year left, and next season, Sanderson's going to start making big money. Other contracts are going to start kicking in. It's this team's competitive window stands to be kind of narrow, I think. And the Senators spent a lot of time letting DJ run this team into the ground. And I think there could be long-term effects from that, but I'm going to wrap it up here and just say that, I wish this decision had been made sooner. I think that the Senators were not going anywhere under DJ, and the only hope now is that there's enough time left for Martin and the new coaching team to salvage what they can from this season and have it not be a total wash.
Now, before I flip it over to other Matt, I just want to say, interesting, Jacques Martin becomes the oldest coach in the NHL. Steos also said he made this move because he has good attention to detail. That was one of the big things. But he also mentioned that he didn't think the message from DJ Smith was getting through anymore. And that's interesting to me. So, Matt, your thoughts on DJ Smith no longer being head coach of the Ottawa Senators?
For the last 3 seasons, I think there have been 3 things very consistent in our lives. It's been death, taxes, and at the start of every season, other Matt saying DJ Smith has 8 to 15 games to be, a good coach or fired. And it finally took, what are we at, the 26, 27 game mark to see that he has finally kicked the can so far down the road, he will never get to it. I feel for the guy on a personal level. I think he is a great development coach. He played the kids when it mattered. And then in the last 3 seasons, the message stagnated and it never got better when it came to the defensive structure, the physical maturity, the guys. The fragility of this team was incredible when they lost, and it still is to this day. And I look at guys who are, have been in the league 6 years. Brady Tkachuk is destined for the playoffs, and I feel like DJ Smith pushed that off for at least 1 season and maybe even 2 if you argue some things. Last season we should have made the playoffs, and we would have made the playoffs with a better coach. I stand by that wholeheartedly. We went into this season under the expectation that DJ had a proper NHL team, and let's see what he can do with it. He has made Jacob Chychrun and Thomas Chabot look like pleb defensemen. He has brought Jake Sanderson from a world-beating defenseman as a rookie to just really good. And he, even with a roster that should be as dead set as possible, still left us questioning some of his roster decisions. Travis Hamonic may never see the ice again, and that's a positive thing. Yeah. I think the best thing that's going to come out of this is there are going to be repercussions for bad play. There is going to be defensive structure, and when you don't buy in, you will be having a little sit on the bench to think about your decisions. That today was a fun practice day with DJ, and unfortunately, he actually still ran the practice, which a lot of people did think was quite weird. And it definitely had the aura of dead man walking, but I don't think anybody is under the impression that this was ever going to change under DJ Smith. And I think Michael Andlauer and Steve Staios probably knew that it was going to end up being a DJ's going to go bye-bye at some point, but they wanted to put it off till the end of his contract, which is at the end of this season. So you are now staring down the barrel of a lost season. Um, I saw like somebody did the stat analysis, and you have to have a over 600 winning percentage, or a 0.600 winning percentage, the rest of the NHL season to end up in the playoffs. And I think I want to say it was Spencer Blake who basically said the Sens have to go from performing like a bottom 5 team to performing like a top 12 team. Um, do they have it in them? Maybe, because they looked really good at some points last year, that, there was really the heart and soul was there, but what was missing was the structure. And we know the heart and soul is there. It doesn't leave the guys with DJ Smith, but the structure is the thing that I think these fellas will be very happy to have. They may not know it yet. They're probably sad their buddy DJ is gone, but it's time to pull up your big boy pants, because it's a result oriented business. And I've said this the last 3 years. If you don't win, you're out.
Yeah, Cheryl Pounder did a little thing on TSN with Gina Retta or something. Anyway, she said that, yeah, it was the same sort of thing. At the end of the day, DJ Smith has to be the leader of that locker room, and the coach, regardless of, the personnel that they have to get some sort of results. Otherwise, they're going to take the first shot. And in this case, that's DJ Smith. And yeah, the personnel, some of the players, they could definitely be better. I think, we'll get to one aspect of the roster later in this conversation, but when it comes to defensemen, they're not pulling their weight. When it comes to forwards, some of them are just not hustling back, and you can't do that, especially in the second period. It seems like, that's the ultimate downfall of this roster. And I feel like we've talked about that for the last 2 or 3 seasons. That's the second period. But I think even more so coming into this season, why it's a bigger disappointment is because last year they had so many injuries and like 7 different goaltenders that it almost became understandable why they missed out on the playoffs. And their special teams were actually pretty good. Their power play and penalty kill were quite good last season. So you looked at it and you're like, okay, with healthy personnel, their 5-on-5 play definitely will improve, right? And then, of course, you come into this season and that doesn't happen. Special teams get worse. And so when you take all those factors, even with a healthy goalie tandem, you just don't get the results. And so it's been frustrating to watch. I think it was time, but the Sens, they go back, they pull the ace out of their sleeve. And as we all figured, when Jacques Martin was hired as, senior advisor to the coaching staff, of course, interim head coach, he gets that role. Now, one thing I didn't mention is Jack Capuano gets to stay on as I guess the other assistant coach. There hasn't been any decision made over his future, and I'm led to believe from what I've read that he actually will have a decision on whether he wants to continue with the new staff or maybe look for a job elsewhere. I don't know. That's interesting, but he's kind of up in the air.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that, because we were all talking about this earlier today before DJ was fired. And, Benet and I, well, and Matt, you agreed, like we said, torch everything, get rid of every coach they have except Alfie and Jacques Martin. Because quite frankly, none of them has showed us anything worthwhile. Jack Capuano is the D coach, and this is some of the worst defending I've ever seen from an Ottawa Senators team. So I'm not really sure how he gets to choose if he keeps his job. I think we can all agree it's because they didn't just happen to have a D coach waiting in the wings. Because my God, this coaching staff is bad. I'm glad they kept Bob Jones around. Like I would be kind of surprised if we saw him on the bench. But it's the fact is DJ should have been gone a long time ago, and everybody who was on his staff should have been gone too. Also, including the goalie coach. Like, come on. Go try something else.
But on that note, Daniel Alfredsson also picks up the power
Hell
play
yeah.
responsibility. So he'll be in charge of getting that to function a little better. It was obviously alive and well a little bit in that Vegas game, but we'll see
Yeah.
if Daniel Alfredsson can bring some positive consistency to that Senators power play.
Yeah, and I think the Alfredsson promotion to coaching is interesting. I think some of us remarked previously that we didn't really want him to be in a coaching role because we want him to be insulated from the criticism that will invariably be leveled at coaches in the coming, weeks, months, and years. Like, no matter how successful they may or may not be. I think my preference was always for Alfie's main job to just be vibes, to just be there to pass on little things to the guys, and be in the room and be able to offer some sage advice. I don't know that I necessarily really wanted him to be like a full-on assistant coach. However, I think that his status within the organization is significant enough now that the clouds that previously marred the relationship have cleared, that I think he can survive whatever kind of like ups and downs there may be in an assistant coaching role. And I think that if the time comes where they decide to move him within the organization, I think that there's a pretty good chance that that move will be seamless, and that people will welcome him back regardless of his record behind the bench.
Yep.
So
yeah. And Steos mentioned that as well. He said whether he's in a coaching position, whether he's in the front office, he thinks that he'll fit. He left it open, but he's like he'll fit well into any NHL organization. So anyway, hopefully Daniel Alfredsson, he is only with the Ottawa Senators going forward. I don't want to see any of that stupid walking and going to some other team garbage that we had to see back in like 2013-14. But yeah, aside from that, if you guys want to make any more comments on how you see this impacting the club going forward, maybe what you expect Jacques Martin, his first conversation in the locker room to be, or his first practice with the team, and what they are going to focus on going forward.
Well, I think we have to look at Jacques Martin's resume. He is the king of details. He is the king of fundamental hockey. Structure is his middle name. And I think that's the single most important thing that he brings to this club. And it will benefit everybody from our first line to our goalies. Our forwards will remember how to play defensive hockey again. Josh Norris in his rookie season was an exceptionally solid two-way centerman who's kind of like lost his way a little bit. And that's probably some to do with injuries, but I firmly blame coaching. I feel like you can cultivate players like Tim Stützle, Ridley Gregg, Shane Pinto once he's here. These are guys that you can turn into, solid defensively centers. I want to see Claude Giroux continue how he's been playing. And I want to see Drake Batherson take it to the next level because, with a good coach, I think he can be a really, really, really good player. But the forwards aren't really the guys that are going to see the biggest difference. And it's going to be the defensemen and the goaltenders. And I'll get to the effects of the goalies, but our defense does not really know how to defend in any situation. Not hell yeah, there's Archer.
Archer also wanted to say he's happy DJ has left the club.
Yeah, that's not surprising. As I said earlier, Thomas Chabot and Chychrun have been pedestrian at best, and I really believe that having a coach who thrives with defensemen that have good physical capabilities and turn them into and take them to the next level. I hearken back to the time when the Penguins won the cup with no Chris Letang, Ron Hainsey was one of their best defensemen, and he made that happen. He was the D coach for that team, and they played a solid style of hockey that just was consistent. And there wasn't structure with DJ, and we're coming to it. But the goalies will also hugely benefit from the defensemen being better, because I have been apathetic the last couple of games, I will admit, but I watched highlights today and I saw a lot of like, why is Korpisalo not making these saves and da 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 da. And quite frankly, I saw like, out of the last 3 games, I saw 4 bad goals, and one of them was on Forsberg. Every goal that in that Vegas game yesterday was defensive sloppiness, or a perfect screen on that second goal, where I'm pretty sure people were saying, Korpisalo should have saved that. They teach that to shooters to, use a player's skates as a screen and then take a quick snapshot. Like Marchessault won the MVP in the playoffs for a reason. But if you look at any goal that is scored, I can lead you to a defensive breakdown. So I think our goalies will get better because our defensemen are going to get better. But as Benet and I have said on a couple podcasts ago, this roster is way better than what they are playing at. And I think we'll be seeing a new Ottawa Senators maybe as soon as tomorrow.
Hopefully that's the case. I also wanted to get a comment in on the goalies because, I think you're absolutely right. And don't get me wrong, I know I've been going to bat for the goalies quite a bit on social media, but I think it's with good cause. Against Vegas especially, one of the goals was scored on a 2-on-1 within the first minute, just over a minute into the game, and it's Jack Eichel, so not much you can do there. And he was smart with his shot selection, shoots it short side, knowing that Korpisalo is going to have to play a little off the post to make sure he can get over in case Eichel passes it. And then, 2 goals scored on breakaways. And there were at least, 1 or 2 other breakaways in the first 2 periods that Korpisalo saved. And of course, 2 of them go in. And I think at the end of the day, it's hard to argue that most goalies in the NHL are going to save multiple breakaway shots in a single game. That's not how it works. And anyway, all that to say, we've had Micah Blake McCurdy from Hockey Viz on the show a few times, and he put out an interesting tweet about the goalies being the problem narrative and whether that gains more traction when extra goals that are allowed are softies. And so he took a look at Korpisalo's numbers, and he said that Korpisalo actually should wear less blame than the defense in Ottawa because he's actually been weak, not in the way people would expect. Like, he's actually allowing, I guess, weaker goals when the games are already out of reach, not necessarily at key moments in the game. So it's kind of interesting, but he's also making a decent amount of saves on grade A chances. And I think that that's what Ottawa was lacking last year, and he's giving them this year. But unfortunately, I think the defense isn't bailing out the goaltending enough, and we're seeing the impacts of that. Now, of course, like you brought up, Matt, Forsberg had at least 1, maybe 2 weak goals that he let in against Dallas. I think that is what sunk Ottawa at the end of the day against Dallas. But overall, I think there really is an issue with the defense. And my biggest hope with Jacques Martin is that he can get them back to playing, some of that nice 2-way style defensive play. They have it in them. The players have it in them. Jacob Chikrin makes like a nice defensive play at least once or twice every game or 2. It's just that the negatives are outweighing the positives. There's more of those bad plays than there are the good plays. And so just making the players kind of close out those gaps better, make their sticks more active on defense when they're back checking and stuff like that. I think that'll all go a long way. Hopefully we'll see the results of that. If not in the first game, then obviously, hopefully in, the next set of games going forward. But that's just my thoughts on that. I know, Benet, you had some comments you wanted to make on the goaltending, so I'll flip it over to you for that.
Yeah, like you said, there's been a lot of chatter in the Sens verse the last week or two as the results were not going our way about where does the blame chiefly lie? Is it with goaltending or is it with defense? I think we've talked a lot about DJ's weaknesses as a defensive coach and Jack Capuano's weaknesses as a defensive coach, which of course is ironic because he is the defensive coach, so he shouldn't be here at all anymore. But we already talked about that. For me, Korpisalo and Forsberg may not be the problem, but they're also not a part of the solution either. We've seen so far, as of December 18th, 80 goalies have laced it up across the NHL this season. And ranking those 80 goalies, anyone who's played at least one game, by save percentage, Korpisalo is 62nd and Forsberg is 73rd. We are talking statistically of two of the worst goalies in the league. And well, you could argue that they're getting let down by their defense. Other goalies also get let down by their defense, and they don't have results like this. But it's all, so some of the blame I think has to lie on these guys. Like you said, Nath, that they gave up. There's been only 4 bad goals in the last 3 games. That's a lot. The good teams don't have, 1 or 2. Good teams don't have over a goal a game that is, something that the goalie should have saved and is a weak shot that they let in that you would expect an NHL goaltender to make a save. Like, that doesn't normally happen. And I think that, because of the situation that the Sens are in, there's a lot of copium going around that are like, oh yeah, they have an 850 save percentage, but actually they're good. It's like, you can't actually really say that. Like, I don't think you can look at the numbers that Forsberg and Korpisalo are putting up and be like, actually, no, believe me, they're good. Like, they're not good, but they're not, the whole problem. Like, if we took Korpisalo out of this situation and plugged in, I don't know, like a UC Saros or someone, like, I don't think the results would be significantly better. They would be better, but like, it wouldn't take us from where we are to like a playoff team. Because we've seen goaltenders like Gustafsson and Talbot leave the team and have success elsewhere in Minnesota, or Talbot is having an extremely good season in LA so far. And so you can definitely say that, some of it is the system that you play in. And speaking to that point again of systems, this is systematic how bad our save percentage has been and our defense and goaltending in one whole ecosystem. Like, this year, the Senators have an 886 save percentage, one of the worst in the league. Last year, it was 895, and the season before that, it was 904. So we've actually been getting worse every progressive season in the amount of goals that we're letting in, which is not good. So goaltending results have been getting worse year over year. The personnel have not been doing themselves any favors, but, I don't think that Korpisalo and Forsberg are like necessarily a worse tandem than like Matt Murray and Forsberg were, but their results are a lot worse. And so I think that speaks to it being not entirely on them, but it is like, like a little on them. Like, they haven't actually been good. Like, you can't actually say they're good. They're just like not complete garbage.
Yeah, I think you brought up
Ian Mendez. I have to get this point out because Ian Mendez literally did an article that said, like, when they're bad, but when they're good, they're world beaters. And there's no in between. But when defensemen don't know how to play, there's way more bad than there is good. And you go and look at Edmonton, for example. They were really, really bad. They brought in a coach who knows how to teach defense just a little bit better, and their goalies remembered how to play goal. And same with Minnesota. So I think they have been a problem, but they are not deep.
Yeah, and Benet brought up Talbot, of course, being the number one example people are pointing to, but Gustafsson, as soon as the Wild's coach was fired, his numbers shot back up to where they were last season. It's so, to me, it's, yes, the goalies are somewhat to blame, but I look at the technique of Korpisalo and Forsberg, and there's not anything that really stands out to me as being like awful. They're not super out of position for the most part, of course, here and there. But for the most part, they're not out of position. They're being beat by like really good shots or screens. So for me, yes, they could be better, and I'm not trying to excuse the results. I'm also just frustrated. I think I've become, of course, biased with Korpisalo. I'll admit that. I mean, I own a friggin' Korpisalo jersey, so definitely biased. But at the same time, looking at statistics, when the Sens play in front of Korpisalo, their offense at 5v5 is almost twice as bad as when they're playing in front of Forsberg. And their defense goes from being better than league average in front of Forsberg. And I know Dallas game aside, because we don't want to talk about that, but with Korpisalo, it goes to being quite below league average. And so to me, it's also really weird that the team just is consistently inconsistent is the best way to put it. They're not getting that positive results across all their games when it comes to the play in the defensive zone. You have some games where they look super structured, turned on, and ready to, not like that, Matt, and ready to defend like NHL players. And then you have other times where they don't really look like they have their act together. And I know people are referring to the Dallas Stars commentators saying that the penalty kill that Ottawa was rolling out against Dallas looked like something you'd see in Pee Wee or something like that. So it's frustrating, but hopefully, Jacques Martin coming in, Daniel Alfredsson coming in, we'll start to see improvement on the special teams and at 5v5. And hopefully, I friggin' hope the second period problems that plague this team year after year can be fixed in some way, because it is just so awful. Anyway, that'll basically end my rant on that. If you guys have any other comments you want to chime in, but before we wrap things up, then feel free to go at it.
And I want to give at least a little bit of time to the extensive notes that I wrote for this show before DJ Smith got fired, where I was ready to absolutely lay into this team for like the culture of mediocrity and complacency that has been built within this franchise. And I think it's going to be the biggest challenge for Andlauer and Staios to unravel. It's like, for years we had an owner that, frankly speaking, poisoned the well by consistently hiring people that were subpar, were mediocre, were not wanted by other teams, and put them in positions and gave them extended job security that no one in their position with those kind of results should be getting. And it goes, this went all the way to the top. It was, the coaching staff, not just the head coach, the assistant coaches, the conditioning coaches, everyone in the hockey ops department that was gutted and then staffed by, scrubs, and up to the GM, who was only recently released. And I think that getting rid of DJ is an important first step into tackling that kind of rot at the heart of this franchise that is a holdover from the Melnyk era. But they're going to have to go deeper than that. They're going to have to can Capuano. They're going to have to fire other people in the hockey ops department, scouts, conditioning coaches. Like, I think that there's some serious head scratching to be done with the amount of injuries that the Senators have year over year, and they're not from freak accidents or hits or anything. They're just like people going down and getting hurt and then missing huge amounts of time. I think that there's a legitimate question to be asked about whether we have the best people in our sports therapy and sports medicine department. And wouldn't you know it, one of the first hires that Andlauer and Staios made when they came in was somebody to take a role in that area. I think if it was me, honestly, anyone that has a start date earlier than March 2022 when Eugene Melnyk passed, get rid. If there's a busboy at Club Red who has been busting tables since the Melnyk era, give him his pink slip. It's, that rot, it goes all the way in through this franchise. And, we're staring at another lost season here, and it has to stop here. There's no more time. The Giroux era will have ended in Ottawa with him never have played a playoff game. We will have, guys who have done nothing but lose since they entered the league, forming the leadership core of a team and not knowing how to be a winning team yet.
Even enter the playoffs.
Yeah, I just think that, there's so many, potential issues that this team is facing. And, the time to clean house the time is nigh, and they should have done it over the summer. If they should have got the keys back in June or July, and they should have cleaned house in the summer when they had time to hire good people to fill those spots. And now we're here and we've lost another season. And I don't know about you guys, maybe the final point here is like whether you have hope for playoffs or some kind of like success out of the season, but I'm kind of already tapped out. I just see the writing on the wall that the hole is too deep again. We're bottom of the East, heading into the new year. We're, not putting up good results. Statistics are bad pretty much across the board. And I just really don't see a path forward for playoffs or any kind of success this year.
I would just really like to see them take, and I hate that I'm saying this. This sounds like the meaningful games BS we've been hearing for the past 2 years, but I would really like to see them make strong strides and be playing at an above 500 pace, at least through the rest of the season. If they're not doing that and they're just still, at the bottom of the barrel, scraping, not doing much, then I am going to be extremely disappointed. This team has the players to pick it up and be better. And like you said earlier, Ben, going into this summer, Giroux and Chychrun are both entering the final years of their deals that'll take them to UFA status. Tarasenko is going to be a UFA this summer. I don't know what the plans are with him. I don't know if he'll want to come back depending on how the season plays out. You have some key personnel that you're going to have to make decisions on going into next season. And I really want to have those players want to be here, but specifically talking about like Giroux and Chychrun, those are kind of guys that you want them to finish their careers here. And I think that it all is going to come down to, can they make this roster competitive, at least for the next 3-4 months until the end of the season? Or, next season they come into the season hot and they're firing on all cylinders. They have to convince these big players that they brought in that it's worth staying in Ottawa. And I think that is going to be something that is raised as a concern going into next season. But anyway, Matt, if you have any thoughts you want to get across before we finish off here, then go for it.
I would say that the thing about making the playoffs is that we need to see leaps and bounds from a lot of players. And I look forward to seeing the Sens win games and win them dominantly, because I think this team has it in them to do that. They have the roster, and I truly believe that they have a good team here. And I think the player that will benefit the most from Jacques Martin is Thomas Chabot. And I really think if Thomas Chabot is back to the way he has played, and like that World Juniors, like I know it's the World Juniors, but that was one of the best performances I've ever seen from a player. And if he's able to get back to that level of play where he is confident and dominating, this team is back, baby. The Sens are back.
On that note, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you want to follow us on social media and you're watching the video, all our social medias are on screen below. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you can find us on Twitter or X at Senstennial, on Instagram at the Senstennial. We're also on Reddit at the Senstennial, and all three of us are in the Sens Discord server, so you can find us in there if you're in there. Thank you so much for watching or listening today. Go Sens, go. Let's see what they can do.
Go Sens, go, baby.